Good morning. I'm Zinklea Samoa in for Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, breaking records. Places across the country are hotter than they've ever been before. Some reaching highs of 115 degrees as the heat stretches from coast to coast. And the extreme temperatures are adding more pressure to Americans' strained wallets. Electric bills are expected to jump 20% this summer. We're tracking when the U.S. could get a break from the heat. Return to prime time tonight. In their last planned hearing, the January 6th committee is expected to reveal what they say will be key evidence on former President Trump's actions surrounding the Capitol riot. But tonight won't be the last we hear about the investigation. What we're learning about the growing questions about those missing Secret Service text messages. Plea for help in an NBC News exclusive. Ukraine's First Lady calls for more worldwide support 6 months into Russia's invasion. What she's seeing in her country right now and her concerns for Ukraine's future. Plus, it takes a village to care for a newborn, and for a lucky few, it takes a luxury hotel. We'll take you inside the retreat center, helping new moms and their babies get the postpartum care they need and adjust to this new phase of life, which really says so much about just how much support you do need during that time period and what it's going to cost you and all those types of things.
It's such a process.
Conversation. Absolutely. We'll get to that later in the show. We begin, though, of course, with the latest on that historic heat wave that's melting Americans that you're feeling at home as we break these record temperatures.
Absolutely. We're feeling the heat to take action on climate change now, and President Biden unveiled new executive actions to battle what he calls a climate crisis.
As president, I have a responsibility to act with urgency and resolve when our nation faces clear and present dangers. And that's what climate change is about. The health of our citizens and our communities is literally at stake. The UN's leading international climate scientists call the latest climate report nothing less than, quote, code red for humanity. Let me say it again, code red for humanity.
So here's what the president's initiatives would do. Provide billions in funding for communities facing extreme heat, widen assistance to low-income Americans, including air conditioners and cooling centers, and propose new wind energy areas in the Gulf of Mexico. However, Biden's initiative stopped short of declaring a climate emergency, which would release federal resources for the crisis. The news comes as 97 million Americans are waking up to a heat alert, with 32 million of them expected to see triple-digit temperatures. Overseas, sweltering heat continues to drive fires in Europe, with firefighters in Greece and Italy working to get flames under control. All the way from Europe to the U.S., we have team coverage with NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman and foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiella. But we begin with NBC News correspondent Jay Gray in Plano, Texas. Jay, it's been hot, and it was another historically hot day in parts of Texas. We know this heat can have potentially deadly consequences. So what are first responders saying about the impact they're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, and Sinclair, right now it's bearable just before sunrise. 87 degrees here in Plano, Texas, just north of Dallas. And we're at Jack Carter Pool. This is an amazing facility. This is how a lot of people are competing with that heat. You've got just about everything you can do in the water here, from a splash area, from kids to a rock climbing wall over a pool. You've got tube runs. It's amazing. They even have a simulated surf here. So they can take 1,000 people a day, and they get 1,000 a day every day they are open here. There are some who can't get to these spots, as you were just asking about, and calls for first responders have really been through the roof this summer, doubling what they saw last year at the same time. So you've got emergency responses to heat-related issues coming daily here, and overwhelming at times for some of the teams on the ground here. If there's any good news in all of that, what we're hearing from those emergency teams is that very rarely is it getting to a point where things are life-threatening for those that are having issues. So they're calling for help early enough, and that's the good news. But it's only going to get worse as the summer continues to heat up here in Texas.
Only going to get worse, a grim prediction. But I know that the other big concern is the power grid, which once again is under strain, and we're not even at the hottest part of the year yet, which is hard to believe. So what is ERCOT, which is Texas's Electric Reliability Council, saying about those concerns?
Well, they've asked people to conserve throughout the summer already. Things have gone well to this point. They feel like they do have enough power to get through where we are, at least right now. But I can tell you already, and I want to make sure I'm getting this number right, but they're saying that they're hovering around the 80,000 megawatt number. They've set 10 records already, daily records for usage this year. That's going to continue. That 80,000 megawatt number, that exceeds everything in their most dire forecast coming into this summer. So they weren't expecting it to be this hot as well. And they continue to worry about the possibility of blackouts across Texas.
So we've got the need for first responders. We've got what you just described. And we also have wildfires in addition to the power grid, right? And I know wildfires have become an issue across North Texas, with several popping up over the last couple of days. They're forcing dozens of people out of their homes. So what's the latest on that front, Jay?
Yeah, you've got 90% of the state in a drought condition right now. We had yesterday reports of more than 20 wildfires just here in the North Texas area, two of the largest, forcing dozens from their homes. They've lost a handful of homes at this point. If there's any good news, it's that they're getting a hold on some of these fires. Remember, though, you've got less than 25% humidity in some of these areas, with winds gusting up to 30 miles an hour. You've got dried out vegetation, and so it's a perfect storm for wildfires. And the teams that are fighting those fires say they expect this process to continue as well. As you mentioned earlier, we're not in the hottest part of the summer here in Texas. August traditionally is the hottest month, so a lot of people very concerned about what that's going to mean as we move forward.
Understandably. Jay Grace, stay cool out there. Thank you.
Overseas, they're also dealing with wildfires. Let's head to Kelly Kobaya in London for the latest on those. Kelly, good morning. So let's go through some of the countries impacted here. Starting with Greece, we saw firefighters battling flames in residential areas across Athens suburbs. What's the latest there?
That's right, Savannah. The biggest fire in the Athens suburbs to the north of that city. Firefighters say they've gotten control or have contained that fire, but a couple of more fires broke out as they were fighting the wildfire to the north. They have had to evacuate some people. There are reports of dozens of homes either damaged or destroyed. Now, they say they have most of these smaller fires contained, if not controlled. But the problem that they're dealing with in Greece, it's not the extreme temperatures. They've largely been spared that in Greece, but they have had a successive period of hot, dry weather. They're just not getting the rain. And in addition to that, they have these tinderbox conditions. And in addition, they have winds gusting up to close to 70 miles an hour, making conditions fighting fires really, really tough. Savannah.
Well, you think about those firefighters. Let's go to Italy now, where they're also dealing with this, and it appears things took a turn for the worse when fires caused some gas tanks to actually explode in Tuscany. Tell us about that incident and the latest on the situation there.
That's right. This is a forest fire near the town of Lucca in Tuscany. It started spreading close to villages. When you have villages, you have gas canisters and other man-made things that can be very, very combustible. So they had to evacuate about 300 people from that region as the fire moved in. That fire, I believe, is still actively spreading. It's burned about 2.5 square miles of forest there so far. And that's not the only fire in Italy. They're also battling a fire close to the Slovenian border. The city of Trieste is now in danger of losing power and water because of this fire. And there are fires breaking out in several other areas, smaller fires in other areas of Italy. Italy is dealing with the extreme heat. It's just starting to hit. About more than a dozen cities now are going to be under extreme heat warnings today, including Florence, Rome, and Milan. Savannah.
Yeah, I think we'll see some triple digits there. Kelly, let's now talk about France. A little bit of good news, some improved conditions, at least there. And yesterday we saw President Macron visit one of the worst hit regions and paid tributes to firefighters. What kind of action is the president of France calling for?
Yeah, so lower temperatures in France, and firefighters say they have that biggest fire in Gironde somewhat under control, but contained, again, not under control, and they're working on that. President Macron said this was one of the worst fires in France's history. 36,000 people evacuated from that area. Entire businesses, tourist businesses, damaged, destroyed. He's vowing to not only beef up the fire fighting services in France, including getting more firefighting planes. They already have 22, one of the best fleets in Europe. He's also saying that they need to rebuild, but they need to rebuild in a way that is taking into account the changing climate. He says this fire season certainly isn't over. The fight against this particular fire isn't over. And moving forward, they need to change the way they build in order to prevent scenes like this going forward. He hasn't laid out any rules yet, but is promising to start work on that soon. Savannah.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much.
Now for the latest on those record-breaking temperatures back home. For more, let's get a check at your Morning News Now weather.
Which means meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here. Are we seeing a break at all?
No, I wish. I can't wait for the day that I can say yes.
I know, right?
Yeah, because it's been going on and on. We're looking at temperatures into the 90s, into the 100s. It's going to feel like 115 again in spots. So another day of intense heat, dangerous heat, and deadly heat, and potentially deadly heat. So that's why this is really important. This is why it remains a major story. 97 million people impacted by a heat alert, whether that's a heat advisory, a heat watch, an excessive heat warning, stretching from the west into the central and southern plains, the lower Mississippi Valley, the southeast, into the northeast as well. So a lot of the East Coast, we are looking at some really warm temperatures, and we're going to see a stretch of really warm temperatures into the weekend as well. So another hot day today, temperatures in the 110s in the southwest, into the triple digits, also in the central and southern plains, 90s throughout most of the East Coast, also most of the Midwest. And we're going to see or at least expect 216 million highs above 90 degrees. I still can't wrap my head around that. And as we look at the triple digits, we're expecting 32 million. That's mainly in parts of California, the Southwest, into the central and southern plains. So it's the same places over and over again. And that's where it gets really tough on your body. So we have the heat, but we also have the humidity. That's a big piece of the puzzle because that's where it makes it feel really sticky, and that's really difficult on your body. We're looking at high humidity from New England all the way down to the southeast, into the south central states as well. So that's why we're looking at heat indices around 115 in spots. So extreme heat today, it's going to feel like the triple 110s in the central and southern plains. It's going to feel like 100 degrees in parts of the northeast. New York City today, 94. It's going to feel like 101. It'll feel, I know, it was bad yesterday. It's going to be as bad today. It's going to feel like 100 in Nashville. 110 is the heat index in Jackson. So as with this heat and humidity, it's summertime. We have a cold front that's going to spark the chance for some storms. We're seeing some stormy weather right now in parts of Kentucky, also Tennessee, into the Carolinas and parts of Georgia. Lots of lightning there. Even some heavy rain, and that's what's going to happen with these storms. We're going to see that downpours, unleashed downpours. We're going to see the chance for some really gusty winds as we go throughout the afternoon. So the severe threat from New England all the way down to the southeast, where you see that yellow, that is the likeliest spot. 27 million people impacted by the risk of a strong to severe storm. That includes a chance of an isolated tornado in New England, so we're going to watch that very closely. Otherwise, the main threats seem to be winds gusting and also the chance for hail. So here's how we're going to see that cold front moving to the east. We're going to see the threat for severe weather. That's going to be the same story tomorrow. But you guys, this just keeps going on. And I wish I could tell you that there was some sort of relief at the end of it. But we're looking into next week. And again, as Sam said, it's July. I think Jay said it also. It's July. Yeah. And we still have August.
Yeah.
And it seems that it's everywhere. I'm heading to assignment in Chicago and Atlanta. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be hot in all those places. I know. You're right.
It's crazy, crazy. All right, Michelle, thanks. We'll see you in a little bit.
Sure.
Now, the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol will hold its last scheduled public hearing tonight in prime time.
That's right. And the focus is former President Trump's actions in the White House and the 3-hour time frame where he allegedly refused to call off the mob of his supporters as they stormed the Capitol. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa joins us now for more on this. Ali, good morning. First off, just walk us through why in this final hearing it's so important and why they've waited until now to fully lay out Trump's actions in those hours the Capitol was attacked.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Well, you laid it out perfectly at the top there that this hearing is going to really be about what was going on inside the West Wing in that 187 minutes between when former President Trump finished his speech on the Ellipse, that rally that we saw, and when he issued that video statement from the Rose Garden hours later. And this has really been the committee's plan all along, to end with this culmination after these past 7 hearings into really what was going on at the West Wing, and really tying that to the violence at the Capitol. And the committee says they're going to plan to do this in a few ways. Elaine Luria, who's going to lead part of the questioning in tonight's hearing, told my colleague Ali Vitali that we're going to see some never-before-seen footage of Congress members fleeing the House and Senate chambers. We're going to see some news clips that we know former President Trump was watching in the West Wing. The committee aiming to prove that he knew that there was violence going on at the Capitol, really trying to shed some light on the exhaustive efforts for hours trying to get him to condemn the violence, condemn the rioters, and ask them to go home. We're also going to hear more from former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, a vocal opponent of what he saw going on in the White House. We're going to hear more about what former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows knew, what he was telling the president. And we're going to hear from at least 2 witnesses in person. These are former White House officials who were so personally impacted by what happened on January 6th that they actually resigned as a direct result of that day, guys.
So, Ali, what could be next? Could we see another hearing?
Well, committee chairman Benny Thompson is leaving the door open for that, saying that really the committee is, according to what their investigation really leads to, they can very well add more hearings going forward. And that's because he says that the committee is hearing from new witnesses every day. They're getting more information every day. We're following that story about the Secret Service deleted text messages. The committee putting out a statement yesterday saying that they're going to go to every length to try and get answers to why those were deleted. They also say that they're still hopeful that the former president or former vice president Mike Pence could possibly come and testify. So there's a lot of work still left to be done. They say they're going to release an interim, as they say, report in September. But really, the deeper that the committee digs, the more revelations that come out, which pushes that possible final report even further.
And Ali, we also saw a bipartisan group of senators announce new legislation, and it would close the loopholes in our existing election laws that really became apparent during the 2020 election. So how significant is this bill as it comes at the end of these public January 6 hearings? And do you think it'll have enough support in both chambers to pass?
Yeah, this was a big deal yesterday. These more than 12 senators, Republicans and Democrats, unveiling these 2 bills that aim to really, like you said, fill these holes, these gaps that former President Trump and his allies tried to take advantage of to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And they include provisions like really making it clear what the vice president's role is in certifying the election results, that his or her role is largely symbolic. They cannot unilaterally overturn an election. It also changes the threshold for Congress members to be able to oppose an election from just 1 member of the House, 1 member of the Senate to 1/5 of each chamber. It also provides more funding and support and resources for protecting election workers. So a lot of changes, a lot of advances in these bills if they do get passed. No timeline yet on whether they will, but it's looking very positive from the bipartisan support we've already seen these 2 bills get from both the Senate minority and majority leaders so far.
A lot of changes to look out for. Ali Rafa, thank you so much.
Thank
you all can watch tonight's primetime hearing right here on NBC News Now with live coverage starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
Turning now to the crisis in Ukraine, the country's first lady has told NBC News, quote, "The war is not over." Olena Zelenska spoke exclusively with Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander about the state of the war as she wraps up her visit to Washington.
5 months into this war, do you worry that the world is moving on beyond the war in Ukraine?
I feel that the entire world is supporting us, but it is very important for us that this support doesn't vanish, because every day brings new victims.
First Lady Olena Zelenska told us she particularly worries about the toll this crisis is taking on Ukrainians' mental health.
How do you, as First Lady, show the Ukrainian people that it's okay to ask for help?
It's a sign of your strength to go and ask for support when you need it. It's an act of courage for them to ask for help.
What has been the hardest part of this war for you personally?
What I feel is that my children are in danger, and of course I'm quite concerned about it. Believe me, all our children are in danger nowadays. Their pain is mine, my pain. We need to finish this war as soon as possible.
This trip to the U.S., her first time away from her 18-year-old daughter, Alexandra, and 9-year-old son, Kirilo, since the war began.
What does your son dream of? What does he want to be?
Obviously, he wants to be a soldier.
He wants to be a soldier.
Obviously.
That's what all Ukrainian boys must dream of now.
I think yes.
What does that make you think as a mom?
Знаєте, перед війною мій
Only thing he wants to do is martial arts and how to use a rifle. And that's what I really want to ensure, is that the childhood of my son is given back to him and that he enjoys his life to the fullest.
Just this week, the White House revealed new intelligence that shows that Russia is moving right now to try to annex parts of eastern Ukraine. Your reaction to that?
You know, we always knew that. Everything they say in their official statement is a complete lie. They always wanted to destroy us, and we always knew about it.
After meeting with the Bidens, who she calls real friends, her message to the American people is simple.
The war is not over yet. It is horrible when you have to say goodbye to your loved ones and to organize funerals in the backyards of your houses. The war continues. Please don't forget about it.
Her country's powerful plea. Peter Alexander, NBC News, Washington.
We're back now with international headlines, and the BBC is now issuing an apology to the royal family over its controversial interview with Princess Diana.
That's right, and Matt Bradley joins us now from London with that and more. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Savannah and Zinkley. I'm here in Britain, and that's exactly where I'm going to start you off. So just as you mentioned, the BBC swore to never again use a 1995 interview with Princess Diana that was obtained by what investigators have called deceitful behavior. And the British public broadcaster have apologized. They've agreed to pay a settlement to the former nanny of Princess Diana's 2 children. We know their names, Prince William and Prince Harry. And there have been allegations that the BBC had secured that controversial interview with the late princess by leading her to believe that the nanny had become pregnant by Diana's husband, Prince Charles. But now, elsewhere in Europe, Italy's government has fallen. Prime Minister Mario Draghi, known as Super Mario, resigned this morning after his national unity government fell apart yesterday, following with a withdrawal of right-wing and populist parties. The country will now likely head to fresh elections just as it faces down a global surge in inflation, like you're seeing in the States and elsewhere, a war in Ukraine, and a very expensive pandemic recovery. And now finally, there were celebrations down under yesterday as Australia and New Zealand marked 1 year until those 2 countries hold the FIFA Women's World Cup. Now, those colorful ceremonies across several cities in both countries started the countdown for the 9th annual tournament, the world's largest women's sporting event.
Which is pretty neat. Cool to see, a year out. All right, Matt Bradley, thanks. Good to see you. And now to an NBC investigative exclusive, and it's a wild one. This is a startling look at just how easy it is to get the radioactive material used to make so-called dirty bombs.
That's right. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk has more on an alarming new report and the new call for immediate action.
In April 2019, the FBI surrounded Jared Atkins' Phoenix home in a tense 2-hour standoff. Inside, he had 3 stolen radioactive devices, enough to make a deadly dirty bomb. Atkins is serving 15 years in a federal prison. Now the Government Accountability Office says bad actors don't need to steal radioactive material. They can just buy it. It's material typically used in technological devices for medical, industrial, and research purposes. But the GAO warns, in the hands of terrorists, even a small amount could be used to construct a dirty bomb.
The GAO now telling us that pretty much anybody can get the materials to create a radiological bomb is extremely scary and I think we need to take immediate action.
In a report exclusively obtained by NBC News, the GAO concludes security measures in place today do not adequately protect against the purchase of high-risk radioactive materials. Using forged licenses, GAO investigators purchased 2 quantities of radioactive material from 2 different U.S. businesses, enough to potentially cause hundreds of deaths from evacuations and billions of dollars of socioeconomic effects. Radioactive materials are controlled by the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Specific security measures are triggered if someone buys large quantities. The investigators bought less than that, but the GAO is pushing for stricter controls for even smaller amounts. Citing in part an accident with radioactive material at the University of Washington in May 2019. It took 2 years to clean up and cost $156 million. According to the report, national security officials tell the GAO there is increasing interest among terrorists and other bad actors to get a dirty bomb.
Actual terrorist groups, including neo-Nazi groups in the United States, are trying to obtain a dirty bomb to launch actual attacks.
In a statement to NBC News, the NRC says it is taking actions, including immediately communicating with the manufacturers of these radioactive sources and expediting a rule change to verify purchasing licenses. The NRC says the threat does not warrant an immediate change. The authors of the report disagree. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Welcome back. Now, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, there are concerns other rights could also be revoked by the court. Congress is now moving to preserve the right to same-sex marriage. The House passing a bipartisan bill with Senate Republicans now facing pressure to support it. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale has more.
With court-given rights now in jeopardy, Democrats pushing to enshrine them into law.
We ought to reaffirm it before the court overthrows it.
Despite 7 years of precedent on same-sex marriage, new fears after the overturning of Roe that the Supreme Court could revisit its 2015 marriage decision, leading to momentum to ensure they can't.
Our country's history is that we expand rights, we don't go backwards.
Yeas are 267.
47 Republicans joined House Democrats Tuesday to enshrine the right into law. Now the Senate hoping to take up the cause.
I want to bring this bill to the floor, and we're working to get the necessary Senate Republican support to ensure it would pass.
A handful of Republicans signaling support.
This is an issue that many Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, feel has been resolved. So I think its time has come.
Public sentiment backs that up, broadly and among Republicans. But that support is far from widespread in Congress.
It's a pure messaging bill. I mean, it's obviously settled law right now.
Other Republicans echoing Justice Clarence Thomas, who wrote that decisions on gay marriage and right to contraception should be revisited.
Look, Obergefell, like Roe versus Wade, ignored 2 centuries of our nation's history. I think that decision was clearly wrong when it was decided.
Thanks to Ali Vitale for that report. Now, Democrats want to act fast on this bill, with some suggesting they use some days out of their August recess even to vote on it. But our sources tracking the numbers say they aren't sure they have enough Republican votes yet to pass the measure.
Now, let's talk pregnancy. Parents may know what to expect when they're expecting, but what happens after a baby is born? With limited access to postpartum care in the U.S., families can head home from delivery feeling lonely and unprepared. In a moment, we'll speak to a doctor about this issue. But first, NBC News Now correspondent Julie Sirkin takes us inside a facility that offers new parents the ultimate luxury.
9 floors above the hustle of New York's Fifth Avenue, inside the 5-star Langham Hotel, is the serene Borum Retreat Center. Starting at nearly $1,500 a night, this opulent postnatal retreat was created to support mothers within 6 weeks of giving birth. Marble baths, parenting workshops, and lactation snacks, all designed to pamper moms during the period known as the 4th trimester.
Once baby is out, the mothers are put in the back burner. The focus is really on the baby's health, but what about moms?
Borum Nam and her husband, Suk Park, are the co-founders of the center, inspired by their own struggles after giving birth.
I was just so confused about, my beautiful, once clean bathroom is now packed with these foreign items. And in the living room with my husband, there was a crying baby that wouldn't just be quiet. I had this anxiety, but I wasn't aware what that was called. It was a postpartum depression, like a baby blues.
Today, they're the parents of 2 children, ages 8 and 12. But back when their kids were born, Park remembers feeling overwhelmed.
It's always hard to feel like you can't do more for your spouse.
In South Korea, where Nam's family is from, attending postnatal retreats are normal after giving birth, she says. But Nam and Park struggle to find that same support in the U.S.
I remember thinking, why do we not have anything like this in New York, the best city in the world?
Postpartum retreat centers like Borum are aiming to tackle a major widespread issue. Support for new mothers is often disregarded. While postpartum care here remains a luxury that isn't accessible to most new parents, it is normal in other countries. According to a study by the Commonwealth Fund, the U.S. is one of the only developed countries in the world where home visits by a midwife or nurse aren't guaranteed. Last month, the Biden administration announcing a new directive to address what is being called a nationwide maternal health crisis. The plan calls for the extension of postpartum Medicaid coverage, stronger protections for mothers in the workplace, and mental health hotlines.
To be honest, I had no postpartum care with my last 2 pregnancies.
Robin, who asked that her last name not be used for privacy reasons, is recovering from a C-section. This time around, she wanted a different postpartum experience.
I left the hospital and I really needed some more help.
Guests like Robin make use of one of the most popular features at the center, the 24/7 baby room. They can drop off their newborns at any point during the day to be closely monitored by registered nurses.
Just caring for myself and getting the quality rest, I think that's something that new moms don't think is necessary for them, but it actually is. You can't not get rest and feel like you can take care of a baby. That's just not possible.
Postpartum retreat centers like Borum aim to remind mothers that their health and safety matters just as much as their babies.
If she wants chocolate mousse, go get it.
Julie Sirkin, thanks for that report.
And now let's bring in NYU Langone health gynecologist Dr. Tara Shirazian to talk about this issue of postpartum care. Doctor, thanks so much for your time this morning. So the U.S. is, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, yet we struggle to support new parents after giving birth. These are just not things that we're used to seeing. Why is that happening?
I mean, there's no doubt that there's a maternal health crisis in the United States. Where we don't have enough access to good services for patients during pregnancy and postpartum. In fact, postpartum visits are roughly 30%. 30% of all women even come for their postpartum visit. So we've had this issue for a long time. I think that there's more attention to it right now, which is wonderful. We really do need better maternal health care in this country. We need better postpartum care. We need better parental leave. We need more reproductive health access. So I think that it is a very important issue that we need to take very seriously.
And I'm glad you highlighted this maternal mortality issue, right? We know Black women are even 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. So this is an issue of equity. And I know that with the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade, there's concern about these restrictions on abortion and the effect it will have on postpartum care now. So what do you think needs to be done to help new parents and make that an equitable help as well?
I mean, we absolutely need to focus on maternal health care. As you said, during pregnancy and postpartum, we need new laws and regulations that will expand access. We need better equity. We need to make sure that every mother, every pregnant person has access to good services, both during pregnancy and beyond. And so, really prioritizing mothers as the building blocks of our community is an important way to really emphasize how healthcare, should be. So I think laws, I think, as I said, parental leave, I think child care. I think being able to expand all of those things for all mothers is extremely vital to the, future of this country.
Now, doctor, that piece that we just saw a moment ago with this luxury retreat center, I mean, it looks amazing. It's obviously not realistic for most of us. What are some things we can kind of take away from that, or things that do make care in this super important time a little bit better for a new mom? And how can we prioritize mental health? What can families just do at home?
Well, the thing that I do like is that we are saying that mom is a priority, right? This center sort of says mom is important. So I really do think that that's the first step. I think historically, we've always talked about the child, we've always talked about the newborn, but we don't prioritize the mother. The mother is key to this equation, which is why reproductive health access is important and all of the rest of it. So I do like that this center focuses on mothers. I like that it focuses on the fourth trimester, because that's a very neglected time for most mothers, new mothers. It's a very scary time. It's a very vulnerable time. We really want to encourage, patients to build communities around them. So if they don't have access to these wonderful centers, at least building a community of support around them, whether that be an online community, whether that be an in-person community in their neighborhood, finding other mothers like them, and sort of being able to share that experience with others moving forward so that we don't isolate new mothers. I think that's a very, very, very important piece to this.
Such good points there, Dr. Shahrozian. Thank you for your time again this morning. We so appreciate you having such an important conversation with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're back with the sticker shock we're all feeling. And this summer, you might have actually already noticed that your electric bills are going up in addition to everything else, and by a lot, actually.
Yes, I definitely noticed. And according to the Consumer Price Index data, electric prices are up by 12% in the last year. And electric bills are expected to spike to an average of $540 this summer. That's up 20% from last year's average of $450. And with Americans facing extreme heat and inflation, it does not look like our electric costs will be cooling down anytime soon. Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief at Investopedia, joins us now to talk about this. Caleb, thank you for joining us. So help break this down. Exactly why are utility bills getting so much more expensive, and could this extend past the summer?
Yeah, good to be with you. And first, we went from very high gasoline prices now to very high natural gas prices. Natural gas, one of the key components that goes into power plants that we use for electricity to cool our homes. So natural gas prices up 38%, and they look like they're going to get more expensive throughout the year. If we look at futures where natural gas prices are priced, we're looking at a 48% pop just in the last week. Looking out for the rest of the year, natural gas futures were up 10% just this week. So high heat. We have a La Nina going on, some of the hottest temperatures in about 40 years. That is causing us to turn those ACs up around our houses and in our workplaces. And that is driving utility prices up. And that is putting a strain on many American households.
Caleb, it's good to see you at Savannah. So is the government doing anything to help keep utility costs down? Because, I mean, we're obviously all dealing with all these other things that are high already. Gas prices that are getting a little lower, but not great. Grocery bills, everything else. Can we get any help here?
Yeah, they can do a little bit, and there are some programs to make sure that folks don't lose their power or don't use their access to utilities if they can't pay their bills. Some states have this. There's something called the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. That's available in 34 states. That's available to folks who can't pay the bill or need an extension on their bill. It's not available in every state, so that could be, the government could say, hey, you got to make that available to all 50 states. That would be useful. Other than that, there's not a lot they can do. The government, the Biden administration, could declare an emergency, a national emergency, and maybe freeze bills for now, but they haven't done that yet, and we'll see if that comes to pass.
And Caleb, it feels important to note that recent census data does show that more than 20% of all U.S. households were unable to pay an energy bill or unable to pay the full bill amount at least 1 month in the last year. So what are some of the options for Americans who just cannot afford to pay their electric bill, especially as these temperatures are getting so high?
Yeah, well, some utilities do allow payment programs. They allow installment programs. They allow you to put off your bill, but eventually you're going to have to pay that bill. So you can look to local community groups and nonprofit organizations for a little help paying those bills, but you can also pay it in installments over time. The best thing you can do, unfortunately, is turn down that AC, especially when you're not in the house, or reduce the amount of energy consumption you're using around your household. Very hard to do that when we have temperatures spiking above 100 degrees in many states and a heat wave just pouring across the country right now. You got to control your own energy costs, but if you need to pay a little bit at a time to pay that bill eventually, you can do that through some utilities.
Important information for consumers today. Caleb Silver, thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. Good to have you. Now, the red hot housing market is now cooling down as more buyers opt to put their dream homes on hold. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa takes a closer look at what's fueling the dip in demand.
Hey there. Well, the days of 20-plus offers and homes flying off the market within just a few hours are no more, according to realtors, as buyers feel the crush of inflation and mortgage rates, and now they're pressing pause on their house hunt. Inflation and higher interest rates are hammering home buyers, slamming the brakes on sales.
The whole process is pretty discouraging.
Teacher Rachel Payne and her fiancé pressing pause on their house hunt in Northern Virginia.
I never thought in a million years I would be offering over $1 million, on a house, let alone that not even being enough.
Payne is far from alone in her frustration as new data reveal draining demand, reversing the red-hot housing market. Homes are increasingly selling at a slower pace, down 21% since January, and mortgage applications just hit their lowest point since 2000.
The prior 2 years, surprisingly, housing market was extraordinary, huge number of buyers, which pushed up the prices. Now, the affordability is becoming a major challenge for new sets of buyers.
Home builders' confidence in the market is also nosediving.
The builders are seeing buyers drop out.
But even as more house hunters call it quits, the median home price saw another high last month at $416,000.
Are you seeing the demand change? It feels like no demand some days.
Realtor Shauna Pendleton says sellers are slow to accepting the new reality of the housing market.
It's very, very hard to accept the changes, especially if you've bought in the last 2.5 years and you went through that experience as a buyer to now have the completely opposite happen as a seller.
With thinning competition, buyers who lost out on bidding may get a second chance at homes that have been lingering on the market more recently. That is, if they can swallow the mortgage rates, which have nearly doubled since last year. Back to you.
All right, Emily Aketa, thank you.
Let's stay on your money. We're looking at another big day on Wall Street as more major companies share their quarterly earnings.
CNBC's Contessa Brewer joins us now to break that down. Hey, Contessa.
Good morning, ladies. Yeah, I'm looking at stocks right now, all in the red. Looks like we're going to open lower this morning as investors digest a flurry of corporate earnings. Stocks have been off to a strong start this week. Major averages rose yesterday, touching the highest level since June. Today, we're focusing on jobless claims data, as well as earnings from Travelers, Snap, Mattel, and Boston Beer. Microsoft is easing up on hiring. Economic concerns are hitting more of the tech industry here, and the company says it's going to decelerate the pace of hiring new employees, but it would not say which divisions would be affected. This move follows similar announcements from Microsoft's tech counterparts. We've seen it from Alphabet, Meta, reportedly Apple, all committing to slowing the pace of new hires. United Airlines got a key profit milestone in its pandemic recovery, but the Chicago-based airline says it's going to scale back its growth plans through 2023. Why? Well, United reported its first quarterly profit since the pandemic began without the help of federal payroll aid. And the company was helped because there was strong demand for travel. I mean, think about it. These passengers were paying sky-high fares, but United says it's facing a challenge of much higher jet fuel costs and, of course, that possible economic slowdown. So that's why it may be just restraining somewhat its plans for growth.
So many factors, especially as everyone's traveling these days. Contessa.
If your flight gets there.
If you make it. Contessa, thank you. Welcome back. There's a new belle in town. R&B star Her has been cast to star in ABC's 30th anniversary special of Beauty and the Beast. ABC's announcement yesterday makes her the first Black and Filipino woman to play a Disney princess on screen. The 5-time Grammy winner says she could not be more grateful for the opportunity and that she always wanted to be a Disney princess. I feel that. I have also wanted that. And Her is making some serious milestones. The 2-hour remake of the 1991 classic will feature a blend of animated and live action scenes and will be taped in front of a live audience. It's set to air in December on ABC and Disney Plus. I will be tuning in. I will be singing along. Maybe I'll dress up.
A mix of animated and live action. I wonder what that's
feels kind of cool, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's awesome. She's great. I've interviewed her. She was so nice. She's so talented. It's crazy, crazy. All right, that's amazing. Now, with temperatures touching triple digits across the country, it's not just humans who are feeling the heat.
That's right. Our pets are feeling it, too. So what do you need to know on how to keep your furry friends safe in the dog days of summer?
Well, joining us now is Dr. Ruth McPeat, and I think we have another guest with us whose name we're going to have to get. Veterinarian and author of Lizette the Vet and her dog, Jet. Ruth, good morning. First question, what is your friend's name on your lap there?
This is Jet.
That's Jet. I could have guessed. Jet's styling. Love his outfit.
Love that.
So a lot of us obviously take our dogs out several times a day. We have to go to the bathroom. But, you know, dogs can't sweat. They can't cool off. We just start seeing them pant. What can we do to make sure they're not too hot when we take them out?
Great question. Well, the most important thing is that people realize that pets are more susceptible to heat exhaustion than we are. So they need to be mindful of their pets. Ideally, whenever possible, you want to leave your pets at home inside where it's nice and cool. If they have to be with you, you want to make sure that you're keeping them hydrated, bringing water with you wherever you are, and a portable water bowl. You want to avoid excessive exercise. So take your pets on short walks, ideally in the morning and evenings when it's going to be cooler outside. And then you want to also always touch the ground before you go. The cement, asphalt, and sand can be dangerously hot, and it can burn your pet's paws.
That always scares me, especially, like if it's on a black street, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Also, team, I'm offended I wasn't asked for Lucy to star in this. Some additional B-roll.
Dog owner.
Yeah.
I don't own a dog. I have fostered, and I dog sit a lot. And I know dogs have different behaviors. So what are the signs?
Dog sit a lot.
I love dogs. So what are the signs, though, of heat exhaustion? Because I know every dog has different behaviors. What should we be looking for?
Well, great question. You want to actually make sure that you're watching your pet. If you notice that your pet is excessively panting, if they're drooling, if they're reluctant to move, they're laying down and they're refusing to get up, if you notice that they're collapsing, if they have bright red tongue or gums, if they vomit, have diarrhea, any of these signs can be a sign that your pet is suffering from heat exhaustion. Left untreated, this can be fatal. You want to get your pet out of the sun right away. Cool them off by moistening their feet, putting some cool water on them, and get them to a vet right away.
Moistening their feet. That's a good tip. I didn't know about that. All right. Also, anything we should know about indoor pets, birds, rabbits, that kind of thing to keep them cool?
It's important that people realize that they too can suffer from heat exhaustion. You want to make sure that you're moving their cages out of the direct sun. You never want to leave their cage if they're inside in the sunlight, because they can suffer from heat exhaustion as well. You can also put in a frozen water bottle that you wrap for rabbits and small pets, that you wrap with a towel. And that's something they could lean against if they get hot. But again, just making sure that they're inside where there's air conditioning or a fan to keep them cool.
Absolutely. And how's Jet doing in this weather?
Jet is spoiled, and he likes to be inside, as you can see.
I love it.
I have a feeling Jet has more outfits than we do.
Honestly, yeah. We could have a third co-anchor with Jet.
Dr. Ruth McPeat, great tips. People are wondering how to keep their furry family members safe, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.